A warm welcome to everyone who is as excited as I am to listen to the fantastic writer, poet, activist Maneo Mohale. We will discuss her amazing book, a collection of poems describing the time after surviving a trauma. She will address a little bit on the current situation in South Africa, and I look immensely forward to talk to Maneo, and I hope you are also very excited on this. Welcome, Maneo.
Hi, I don't know if you can see me or hear me, but I'm over here.
We can see you and we can hear you loud and clear. And I wanted to give you like an applause, but there's no audience here. It's just you and me, but we are also, I mean, we're sending in out in the cyberspace, so hopefully many people are watching.
Thank you.
Where are you?
I'm in Johannesburg at the moment. I'm in my home. I have my sweet puppy also just sleeping over here, so it's just I'm just home.
That is great. As mentioned in the introduction, we will talk about this book. This is your debut collection.
Yes, it is.
When was it published?
It was published last year, actually, this time, around about this time, within a couple of days. So this is around the first anniversary of the book. So it's just turning 1.
How has it been releasing it out into reality?
It's been a wild journey, honestly. I've received such warm critical praise, and I've also received, which I think means more to me, just a lot of love from my community, especially queer and trans communities that have connected with the work, and it's definitely lit a fire up my bum with the work ahead, organizing and writing around queer sexual assault.
Why did you write this book? When did it emerge, and what was the message or level of awareness that you wanted to bring out to the world?
So the book started out as a thought in the back of my mind while I was a Bitch Fellow for Bitch Media. I was a global feminism fellow. And as part of that journey, I had to write 4 sort of short pieces, but I was also lucky enough to write a long form piece. And I had already decided that I wanted to write about my sexual assault as part of the long form piece and the long form requirement of the fellowship. But what was wonderful about that, but also that was a spark for this book, is that nonfiction can be quite limiting in the ways and the language and the nuances that I wanted to explore and the themes that I wanted to explore. Whereas in an essay form, I got to be quite explicit and specific. What I think that poetry expands upon in that sort of space, that it gives me space to think about the muddier aspects, the more difficult aspects to name, and poetry gives that kind of space and expansiveness for it. So I had decided once the long form essay was published that I wanted to write and explore the assault from a different direction and from a different angle.
It gives a very powerful strength to your message, and also a sense of being timeless, more or less. Could you elaborate a little bit about the actual title of the collection? Everything is a deathly flower. It sounds almost Shakespearean in its sort of it's very both heavy and light.
Weightiness.
Where did it come from?
So Everything is a Deathly Flower as a title was something that is a line in one of the poems, the titular poem in the collection. And it was a sort of fever dream that I wrote the particular poem inside. I was in Cape Town, and it was one of the first poems to introduce itself to me in the collection. And what I wanted to kind of touch on, it's interesting that you say Shakespearean, because I'm obviously deeply influenced by Shakespeare's sonnets specifically. But what I like about the title, which also keeps unfolding itself to me, was I wanted to explore the kind of duality of things. That I wanted to write about a terrible thing, sexual assault, but I wanted to imbue the experience and the trauma with lush, lavish, beautiful language and imagery. And I think that death is something that's been on my mind more and more now, because it feels closer with this pandemic that's slowed the world down in so many different ways and has peeled back so many layers that a lot of us who have been looking have been aware of, but I think it's never been this as explicit as it is now. So I think the title hints at the beauty of things and the ugliness of things, and the vividness of things, but also the darkness of things, in a sort of total way, in a totalizing way. Hence, the everything is.
Yes, and the forms, you explore many forms of poetry and different styles, and also even you've worked with the layout of the book. Some of the poetry is published like on another angle. You have to turn the book, etc. It's very experimental, and it's like graphics. I don't know if you can see this, but it's very interesting, like form-wise, and ambitious in that sense. And I think that's what also gives this very sort of heavy feeling of this being very like serious literature. But and I strongly recommend everyone to buy this book, because there are so many layers in this. It has to do with both your identity. You are very, very vulnerable and open and close in when reading the book. I feel very close to you, but also you're like this omnipotent sort of storyteller, and try to give an image of the world, and as you say, about dynamics of power, and also historical relations, and also language as one aspect of exploring human both behavior and relationships, etc. I wanted, instead of trying to explain the book, I wanted you to give an example and actually read one of the poems. So I asked you in advance if it was possible to read Gazania, which is on page 30. Just for everyone to enjoy this amazing piece of literature.
So yes, this is Gazania, Treasure Flower. I am looking for the exit. I am looking for my stomach's voice. I am looking for Nkhono. I am looking for her twisted root. I am looking for the door above it. I am looking for her iron cross. I am looking for a Catholic shoot. I am looking for thick-ankled sky. I am looking for a railway. I am looking for his soapy arm. I am looking for a remedy. I am looking for the dream. I am looking for it soaked in snakes. I am looking for my blood's message. I am looking for my country's jaw. I am looking for the night mountain. I am looking for her flooding wounds. I am looking for answers. I am looking for my tongue again. I am looking for rancid prophecy. I am looking for revenge. I am looking for a blade now. I am looking for the words splitting my spine. I am looking for my lover's teeth. I am looking for their tongues again. I am looking for a seed. I am looking for the lizard in my name. I am looking for betrayal. I am looking for a sterile light. I am looking for the word eating my eye. I am looking for the backwards river. I am looking for my gender now. I am looking for its burial. I am looking for the dead. And I am looking for the depth of this pool. I am looking for Baradibaga. I am looking for the yellowed men. I am looking for my fever's birth. I am looking for Buta Bute. I am looking for blood. I am looking for burnt women. I am looking underneath me. I am looking for the way they left. I am looking for the moaning. I am looking for a sweeter shame. I am looking for the dogs and why they speak my name in Januaries. I am looking for my mother, for the mound and its only reason. I am looking for my sugared mouth, now open again for another.
It's shivers when you read. It's so amazing. It's a sort of music to both the language and all the seeds you plant with your imagery. What is that? The jaw of your country. What is that?
I think what I love about poetry and how expansive it can be and how much space there is, the space that there is for interpretation. So instead of me being as prescriptive of saying what I mean by my country's jaw, but I can say that the space that I was writing out of is I think and I write a lot through consumption and about consumption. And I think it's no surprise to say that there are certain people here that are consumed and are marked as consumable, marked as endangered, marginalized, placed in deliberate, systemic, chronic danger when we're thinking about Black people, when we're thinking about poor people, and from the position that I write from people of marginalized identities and sexualities. So I think when I am writing about my country's jaw, I'm signaling to something about the weaponry and the machinery of the state and how it chews up certain people and spits them out. And I'm signaling, historically, I'm signaling to the present. I'm thinking in not just anthropomorphizing the state, but I'm thinking, or I'm trying to think quite intensely about empire. Always, I think in all my writing, I'm thinking about empire. Sometimes explicitly, but I think there I'm trying to kind of hint at the layers underneath things, but consumption as a central theme.
That is so amazing. I'm so glad I asked you, even though it's blunt, to explain an imagery and a metaphor, because that's exactly the kind of linkages I made in my head when I saw this sort of Gillette, you know, an ad for Gillette with a jaw, the perfect line, and this like very masculine sort of patriarchal kind of imagery. Another line that really struck on a string in me was the looking for your blood's message. Is that only, do you think of heritage and like ancestry, or do you also think of other things in this message?
Ancestry is the doorstep, I think, through which I'm kind of writing, and lineage specifically. I think it's astute that you pick that up, but I think it's also it's littered throughout the book that I'm thinking about lineage, especially when I'm speaking to my grandmother, and in that space I'm problematizing language, and the language that a lot of us queer people have inherited from the global north, and the tensions that language then kind of elicit and inspire inside of us when we try to explain ourselves and introduce ourselves to people that raised us, that have their own language for, and a lot of it is derogatory, but have their own language for who we find ourselves as, who we are as queer people. But I think that I'm thinking about blood in a really sort of abstract way, while also being quite direct and thinking about my own blood, my own family. But I'm also thinking about life force. I'm also thinking about spiritual power. I'm also thinking about political power, in that so much the borders are protected and enforced and drawn with blood. So I'm thinking about that, and especially when I'm thinking or writing about my own body, I invoke borders and invoke border imperialism in my writing to kind of link that, to say it's not just about my own blood, but also blood that was spilt in the name of this thing that we call nation. So yeah, that's one level.
You're mentioning you're an activist within the queer community, and of course this calls for an intersectional analysis of feminism. Could you give us some advice on how to work in solidarity with the intersectional feminist struggle in South Africa today as a civil society NGO organization trying to support this movement? What can we do and what shouldn't we do, maybe?
I think a very important lesson that we're finding now when we are watching the uprisings and the movements and the radicalization of more and more people, especially around Black Lives Matter, and even deeper inside of that, around the abolition of carceral systems, and now calls for the abolition of police. That I think that the most important principle is to let the people closest to the issue speak the loudest, and to center those voices, and not just in a tokenizing way, because I think that that's something that we've been seeing more and more of, and especially in the diluting of language and theory online, on Twitter, on Instagram, etc., that it's not as encouraged to engage and earnestly and intellectually with theory, and also deeply and genuinely with movements, and movements are made of people. And I think by listening to people when they describe themselves and their struggles on their own terms, amplifying the voices that need amplification, and never speaking for people or assuming another person's experience, and in having a deep and continued analysis of power and how power functions and moves inside social movements, and through that understanding, earnest analysis of power, then you can find your own place and situate your locality and positionality to give up power or to take space, etc. But that can only happen in community. And it's difficult to do so now because we find ourselves in online spaces, and it's more digital, and it's more difficult to find and nurture and protect community. But in the spaces where that is happening, because it has been happening, it will always be happening, true solidarity is fostered when you listen to the voices closest to the issue and believe them.
I'm so happy to. That's like also music to my ears, since that's the principles we work by. We work by feminism and also solidarity, and especially the circle of solidarity. That it's always the right bearer, the one who is struggling, who has the strongest analysis of what should be done. And if you are working in civil society, that's where you should keep your focus and listen in and understand what should be done and how. We have to quit this conversation now because the time has run out. But I wanted to ask you, do you work on something new right now?
Yes, I'm kind of learning now, at least in these lockdown days, of how to switch mediums. So at the moment, I'm both a writer, but I've always been an editor, but I'm leaning more into the editing space, and I'm developing and hoping and dreaming to start my own imprint.
Oh.
So yeah, big dreams.
Amazing,
but,
yeah.
I think that's what's on the horizon for me. It might take a long time, but that's definitely the dream from here on out.
That is so amazing to hear, because also we will at the book fair, since this is now a digital book fair, we decided that not next year because that was already arranged for, but 2022 will be Focus South Africa on the Swedish Book Fair. So hopefully we can meet in person when you come and,
Yes.
and talk about this book or something else on your interesting imprint next time in 2022. It's been
Yes.
so amazing to listen to you. Thank you so much for taking the time, and thank you for this extraordinary book that you've written. And to all the Swedish viewers, you can probably find this one on the internet bookshops, or you could email to the publishing house and ask for a copy and read it, because it's great literature. Thank you so much to Maneo Mohale, and thank you for you who has been listening.